What is the world made up of? So this is a question that many people have tried to answer in history. And in earlier times, people believed that the world is made up of things like fire, water, wind, and space, and earth. So they thought that these are so this is basically an Indian idea that the world is made up of these five basic materials, and everything around us is made up of these five things. The problem with this idea is that this idea is simply wrong, because they never thought so deeply, and they just tried to be philosophical and came up with this theory. But this theory has no scientific basis, and thus is completely wrong. Later, some scientists came up with another theory that matter is made up of particles, small particles, but the types of particles is not simply five, but more than that. And now we know that there are actually basically we have 118 basic types of particles that make up the complete universe or everything around us. So everything includes you, your table, your chair, your bed, your house, the cars around you, the trees, this everything, the sun, the earth, all planets, everything is made up of those 118 elements. So now so those 118 types of particles are called elements, right? So we have different types of particles, and those different types of particles are called elements. So the world is made up of 118 elements. So let us understand this more with an analogy about colors. So if you ever studied about something about colors, you might know that these three are so this is basically, if you look at your computer screens or your phone screens, there are basically three colors that make up all the colors coming out of your screen right now. So if you're watching this on a laptop or a smartphone, the colors from the screen there might be millions of colors, different shades of colors coming out of your screen right now. So you would be seeing this color, the skin color, and obviously these colors. But the very brilliant thing about colors is that all those colors are actually made up of these three basic colors. So if we have to draw an analogy between the real life particles, elements, and colors, so I'd say these three are the elements of colors, right? These three are the basic elements. Every color is made up of these three basic colors. So these three are the basic building blocks of color, right? So if you could mix these two in various proportions to get various shades of all the other colors, you could mix these two, you could mix these two, or you could mix all the three together. And by doing so, you can make various different shades of colors, and everything around us, every color around us is made up of these three basic colors. So these are like elements, right? So similarly, we have various elements, to be precise 118 elements that make up everything around us. And so that is basically it. And to name a few, we can name, let's say, I can name one of the types of particles is called iron, and another type of particle is called oxygen. So just like these three particles have names, right? This is called red, not particles of colors. So these three colors have names, right? This is red, this is green, this is blue. Similarly, and we have only three basic colors that make up every other color, and all colors you see, everything around you, right? Similarly, what makes every matter around us are these 118 elements. So we have 118 different elements, different types of particles. So we have iron particles. So you might seeing, so if you have iron particles, so iron is an element, which means some particles are called as iron particles, and so iron is an element. Similarly, oxygen is another element, and there are 118 such elements, and these are a few examples of that. Iron, oxygen, or even carbon is another example. It is another type of particle. So if you have to visualize those particles, well, we'll do in the next video. But the basic idea of elements is that elements are types of particles. So, and we've given names to different types of particles. Some particles are called iron particles, some particles may be called oxygen particles, some particles may be called carbon particles. But matter is basically made of small particles. So if you have a sheet of iron, let's say like this, and you keep on dividing it into half, further half, and keep on dividing into smaller and smaller pieces, essentially you'll be left with some powdery material. But if you take one particle out of that and keep on dividing it even further and even further until you reach a point where you get one single particle of iron, and if you divide this further, it will no longer remain iron, right? So if you reach such a level, that one particle is called an iron particle. So that is the basic idea behind elements. And these types of particles, so iron particle, you could have an oxygen particle, maybe which would look somewhat different from it, maybe I don't know in what sense, but the point is it might have different properties, it might have different size. And similarly, you have different types of particles, iron, oxygen, carbon, and similarly we have 118 different types of particles, and these are generally called elements. So we have iron is an element, oxygen is an element, carbon is an element. And let's say if you take lots of particles of iron, right, and if you join them together, we get one large sheet. Okay, and this is elemental form of iron. Why is it called elemental form? Because this is just the pure form of iron, right? This is the form in which you find this. So this has particles of only one type of element, right? One type of element, which is iron. So this iron sheet has only one type of particles, which is iron, right? Or if you have to have an analogy in terms of color, you could say that these two are the elemental forms of blue and red. Why are these basic forms? Because this has only one type of color, one type, just like this had only one type of particles, iron particles. This has only one type of color, which is blue. This has only one type of color, which is red. So they are the basic forms of color here. And similarly, if you have an iron sheet, that is the basic form in which or maybe a container that has oxygen particles in it, or maybe a box that has carbon particles in it. So these are elemental forms. Why? Because a box with only carbon particles has only carbon particles. It has only particles of one element, or only one type of particles. So that is the basic idea behind elements. And elements, whenever you ask you what is an element is not a substance, but it is basically a type of particle. Just like we have carbon, oxygen, iron, there are different types of particles, and basically we have 118 such types, and these are all the types of particles we have. And everything, your table, your chair, your car, everything is made up of these 118 elements. Some of them, right, not all of them, but some of them, and everything comes from these 118 elements. So all those particles, maybe if I talk about you, the particles in your body, every smallest particle in your body is one of these 118 elements. So it has to be either of these, one of these types, right? So that is the basic idea behind element. And yeah, in the next video we'll look at what I mean by the word particle.